right, good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Lesher. I am George's son, and I am going to be doing today's webinar. Today, we're going to be covering our financials that we released, I believe it was a year and a half ago. We've made some changes and some updates to it, and I'll be covering the whole process in today's training session. As always, you can type any questions you have in the chat box. I will have an open Q&A at the very end. You can always send us an email or give us a call if you have any more additional questions. Our next webinar will be August 4th, and George will be covering our new equipment module. We are going to give a detailed look at our new preventive maintenance, our Samsara integration, and all the changes we made to work orders and equipment. So be sure to tune in for that one because it's going to be exciting. So, to get started with financials, I'm just going to give a quick overview of financials. So, when I talk about a financial in pro fund accounting, what I mean is it's a budget and a balance sheet, and it's based on a fund and a fiscal year. So, whenever I talk about like a financial, I'm referring to a budget and a balance sheet tied to a fiscal year and a fund. So our financials, it comes in three parts. The main financial, which has your fund, your fiscal year in it. The budget, which is entered as a dollar amount on an account number. And the balance sheet, where you can assign assets, liabilities, and account numbers to create lines for display in the financials Excel side of it. The balance sheet lines will show up with the account numbers assigned. We allow you to edit a budget by changing the dollar amounts. You can add, remove any account from the budget. You could update the dollar amount by a percent. We offer a percent. And we also have a 12-month trend for the monthly views on our financials. For the budget, we do allow budgeting at any account level. So if you want to budget at the third level, you can. If you want to budget at the fourth level, you can. If you want to add accounts at the seventh level, you can. If you want to do a combination of them, you can. We don't restrict how you budget. Once you set up your budget, we have financial statements menu item, which is an Excel spreadsheet. It provides a real-time look at the data. So we have four different what I consider looks, which we have a balance sheet spreadsheet, which is just a snapshot of your balance sheet. The budget details page, which is a comparison between actuals and budgeted amount. We have a profit and loss, which provides a look at current expense versus revenue. That's just a look of all your expense versus all your revenue accounts, I believe at the third level. And then we also provide 12 monthly spreadsheets to look at your monthly versus your budgeted versus actuals for the month. Also of note, this is replacing our budget calc program that is set to be phased out in 2028, although that is just an estimate. I don't know exactly when. We're looking to phase it out by the end of 2028, but I cannot guarantee that is when we will be removing budget calcs. So you do have a couple of years to get used to the new financials. We will have a conversion script to attempt to have a conversion script to have all your existing budgets to financials. That is still in the working. But the other thing I want to mention is when you're using this, if you don't like something, please let us know and we can see about changing it or updating it. We want to make sure that our financials is very good and you guys want to use it. So that is kind of like an overview of what financials is inside of ProFund. So when you first log into ProFund, there's a button called Financials, and it'll contain a fund and fiscal year. This will be created before the balance sheet and budget lines. Each financial will have one budget and one balance sheet tied to it. We now allow multiple financials per year and per fund, so you can have as many financials for, say, fiscal year 2025 as you want, and you can have them for your 201 fund. You can have 7 of them if you want. So before we only allowed one per fund per year, but now we allow as many as you want. So that was one of the changes we just made here in July, and it is released to everybody. So We now allow you to enter a description to identify the financials when you run the financial statements. Before we didn't. So you can now enter a description for your financials. You can retire financials so it will not appear in the financial statements. And then the other thing I want to point out is when you see the account control appear inside of like adding an account number or to the budget or adding an account number to the balance sheet, it ignores the user search segments specified in the user settings and will always start at the first level. And that is due to the fact that we allow budgeting at any level. So usually when you use the account control to find an account number, you're always looking for a level 7. But in this case, the search segment does not know about what's before it. It only looks for anything after that. So those particular account controls, you have to, if you know the account number, you're going to have to type in the full 2010489, whatever, and not just type in 489 because we allow you to do it at any level. We don't know, like if you type in 489, we don't know if you're at the third or fourth and what you're looking for. So we had to not honor those settings to get it to where it would allow an account at any level. So when you're creating a financials, we have a new button. You just click to create. When you click to create, there'll be a couple of options that will only appear before you click save, and those are the options to create the budget and balance sheet, which give us 3 different options. You can use the default that we laid out, blank, which won't fill out any account numbers and any balance sheet lines, or you can copy from an existing financials. So the option 1 is use default. This option, it'll autofill the budget with revenue expense accounts at the 4th level. No dollar amounts will be added, thus each budget line will be in fact 0, but it autofills all your accounts at the 4th level. So if you have a 4-level account that has a revenue at the 7th level, you'll see that in the revenue side. And if you have an account that has an expense account at the 7th level, you'll see it on the expense side. The default balance sheet lines we create for each asset, liability, and equity fund balance at the 3rd level. That one is not the 3rd level, not the 4th level. So we auto create those balance sheet lines based on the account number and account name. Blank again just creates a blank balance sheet with no account numbers assigned and no balance sheet lines created. So it's just completely blank. Option 3 is use existing financials. We allow you to copy from any financials, even retired accounts, even retired ones if you want to. The existing financials, budget, dollar amounts, everything trends and balance sheet lines, everything will just copy over. It'll be a carbon copy of that existing financial. And it doesn't have to be prior to your current fiscal year. It could be one that's in the future. So you don't have to, as long as it's existing, you can copy from it and it'll copy all the information. The one thing I will say is it will not copy adjustments, as those are kind of like a separate something that shouldn't be there at the start of your fiscal year. You shouldn't have any adjustments right off the bat. So adjustments will not copy over. When you click on the new, you select which fund you want to create. You enter the fiscal year start date. So it'll fill in with the default value to start with is your upcoming fiscal year. So let's say your fiscal year starts 1/1 of 25 and you're doing this, let's say in October of 25. The date that'll pop in there is 1/1 of 26. The fiscal year box is a non-editable field and it'll be automatically updated when you click save, and it'll bump to the proper fiscal year. If, like I said, if your fiscal year ends October 31st, or I'm sorry, September 31st, then it'll put the fiscal year as the end date. So the fiscal year is always considered the last day, whatever year your last day of your fiscal year falls under. So you can enter a description, any description you want. And then once you finish, you click the save button. The balance sheet and budget will be automatically created based on the options you selected. Once you have created a financial, most fields are locked and cannot be edited. You can only edit if the financial is retired and the description. You can change it. Other than that, you can't change fiscal year or fund. You can delete the financial from the list by just clicking the X button. However, it will not be saved in the database until you click the save button. So if you accidentally clicked X and you didn't mean to, you can just close and reopen and it will still be there. You have to click save and it'll completely remove it. It will also remove obviously the budget and the balance sheet lines tables that are tied to the financial. And after once you have created the financials, you can click there'll be a little pencil icon next to the row, and that is where you can actually edit the budget and balance sheet lines. So before I dive into the editing of that, because that'll be a separate window, I'm going to go ahead and show just the financials to start with, so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So when you pop into setup maintenance, I'm going to come in here and this is what you're going to see, my different financials. So you can kind of think of financials as they have two like separate tables that are independent of each other. They have your budget side and you have your balance sheet side, and both of those are used in financial statements. So they kind of house two separate tables worth of data. One has your budget, one has your balance sheet lines, and they're independent of each other. So as you can see, the fund is grayed out fiscal year. You can change this if you want. In fact, let me do that. Let me change this, make this 2024 fiscal year, and hit save. And it saved it. You click the plus arrow to create a new. I want it for 2026 because my current fiscal year is in fact 1 of 2025. Just typically you're not going to be creating a new financials for the current fiscal year. General, I want to use existing and I want to select it from my 2025. And then I want to call this my 2026 fiscal year. And I click save. It created the financial and it automatically created the budget and the balance sheet tables based on my 2025 numbers that I had put in. And if you want to delete it, you can click X. This is one of the few confirmation boxes that you cannot. Don't show this again. This is a special one because typically you shouldn't be deleting these, especially in years past, but we just want to make sure you're sure you want to delete it. Let's see if I close, and because I haven't saved it, and if I go back in, it will show up again. And now it is gone. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. I'm going to pause it there for a quick minute. Does anybody have any questions on creating and setting up a financial before I move on to editing your budget? Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything immediately, so I'm going to go on to editing a budget and balance sheet lines. So when you click on that little pencil icon, there'll be four main tabs on the editing window: a revenue tab, an expense tab, an adjustments tab, and a balance sheet lines tab. And on that balance sheet lines tab, there'll be also three sub tabs, one for assets, liabilities, and equity/fund accounts. There's a save button at the top. There's also an add account button, and that'll change based on what tab you are. If you're on the revenue or expense tab, that button will open up a window to add an account to the budget. If you're on the adjustments tab, a window will open allowing you to select an existing account number from the budget and add a dollar amount adjustment. And if you are on the balance sheet lines tab, the button will say add line and it will add a line to the current sub tab. So there's also a fringe rate that financial statements used to calculate the fringe amount. If you want to calculate the fringe amount, just be note that this is entered as a number, not a percent. So entering in a 2 will double the amount, not multiply it by 0.2%. So it is a whole number. So if you want 2%, it'd be 0.02. So like 1.5 would be 1.5 times the amount. The fund fiscal year and fiscal year start information will be displayed in the upper right-hand corner. And of note, you can only be editing one budget at a time. You have to make sure if you cannot be editing multiple budgets. You cannot also edit a budget while you have a new one in. If you're creating a new financials, make sure you save it before you edit any of the budgets. So for the revenue and expense tabs, they are the same. They operate identical to each other. Obviously, the only difference is one's a revenue and one's an expense for the financials. All the budget lines will be displayed in a grid. We automatically, for the road commissions, we automatically remove the first two levels because if you're going to budget at even at the third level, every single account number is going to be 2010. So we found it redundant to keep displaying that. It took up more room on the screen. And it also made it a little bit easier to read as you didn't see a bunch of 2010s first. So it made it a little easier to figure out which account number you're looking at. It's a non-editable field. Obviously, you change an account number like that, you have to add it through the add account. We do, however, if you want to budget at the fund level or at the second level, I'm not sure why, but if you want to, we will display 201 or 2010 if you choose to, but I don't know if why you would, but you never know. But we did make sure that you will see the 201. We have a line column that you can order the lines you want them to appear in the financial statements. So when you change a number and tab off the cell, all the lines in the range will automatically update and the rows will move accordingly. If you have sorted the grid in a different way just by clicking the headers, you may or may not see the rows readjust just because of the sorting, but the line numbers will update it properly. In the budget column, you can click on it and you can enter any budget amount. You can enter a negative or a positive number. To enter a negative number, you just enter the number and then hit the minus sign and it'll make it negative. The account name will be displayed and cannot be edited. And then you can click the X button to delete a budget line. And just like financials, it won't actually be removed from the database until you click save. And then the bottom half of the tabs has two different tools. It has a percent adjustment field and the 12 monthly trends. So when you're editing a budget, you can highlight it, you can click on the budget amount cell or drag over the cells to get a range. And the trend values will populate in the trend boxes. You can also hold down the shift key and click and it'll highlight a range of cells. You can also hold control just to click different cells. So there are multiple ways to get a range of cells. So for trends, each budget line has 12 trends, one for each month of the fiscal year. Note that the months are not necessarily January through December, as month one is your fiscal year start month. So if your fiscal year starts October, then M1 is considered October as opposed to January. So that is the month of your fiscal year. The trends are used in the monthly pages. The budget amounts are multiplied by the trend for each month. So if you have a budget of like $1,000 for one particular account number, that'll be multiplied by the trend percent. And on that month, it'll show whatever percent of that budget is as you're budgeted for that month. Unlike fringe, these are entered as a number but are a percent. So 8.33333 is going to be 8.3333%. So unlike fringe rate, this is entered as a percent. The sum of all 12 trends will equal 100, with 12 being the first month to have its trend change based on other months. So if you up the trend for, let's say, the third month, it'll first remove the trend from month 12, or vice versa. If you lower the trend for the second month, it'll add it to the 12th month. And if you change the value in the 12th month, it'll actually revert it back to what it was, as it is the column that gets updated. So if you need to add more to the 12th month, you're going to have to think about what months you want to remove to get that to the 12th month. And again, if you put like 90% in column one, it'll start with the 12th month, remove that, and then if there's still some left, it'll keep going to the 11th, the 10th, the 9th, and so on until the total is equal to 100 exactly. So we also offer a budget adjustment tool where you can highlight a bunch of cells, and while you still have them highlighted, you can enter a number in the budget percent box. And again, this is also just like the trends entered as a percent. So 2.1 is entered as 2.1%, and it'll automatically adjust the budget by 2%. So when you have finished adjusting all the trends and the budget amounts, you can click Apply Changes to update the information. This will automatically update the trends to make sure they equal 100. And this will also update the budget percentage if you had a amount in that box. When you have finished making changes, make sure you click Save at the top of the window. That is something even I forget to do sometimes, is click Save, and then I don't know why my thing didn't show up like it was supposed to. So when you're adding an account number to a budget, you obviously click the Add Account Number budget. You can add an account at any level as long as there is an account at the 7th level with the account type of the tab you are. So if you try to add an account at the 3rd level, we need a revenue account at the 7th level for that sub account to be included in our revenue side. And also note that this is, if you're on the revenue tab, even if you find an account that has both revenue and expense, it'll only be added to the revenue side of it. Same with expense. If you have an expense account that has both revenue and expense, but you're on the expense tab, it'll only add that account to the expense part of the budget. There'll be an amount field where you can enter in the budgeted amount. There's a couple of restrictions. One is you cannot budget any account that has been linked to the funds in the funds menu item, as those accounts are not typically part of the budget. So this is your expense closing account, revenue closing account. This is your payroll linked account. So in funds, when you set up your fund links, those accounts should not be part of your budget, and you cannot add them to your budget. The other thing that we do allow you to do is we do provide an override flag if you want to add a level 7 revenue to the expense, or add a level 7 expense to the revenue side. We do have an override checkbox that will ignore the fact that you're adding a expense to a revenue side of the financials. It only works for accounts at the max account level. So for road commissions, it's 7. So if you try to do a sub, it will not work for a sub account. It's only for level 7. And also you cannot add it to both revenue and expense. So if you already have that level 7 expense account in the expense side, you can't add it to revenue as well. So I just want to make sure that to point out that we do have an override. In the adjustments tab, it has all the adjustments you made throughout the year. The grid is not editable, it's just a display. The only thing you can do is remove the adjustments. To add, you just click the Add Adjustments button. You can specify the adjustment date and then select an existing budget line to adjust. So the list will have all the current budgets assigned both revenue and expense. The current budget amount for the budget will be displayed as well. You enter the adjustment and the new total will be displayed, and then you click Add to add the adjustment to financials. This one's pretty straightforward. It's not that complicated. You just click Add, select what account number you want, and then add the adjustment, and then click Add. The last tab on financial editing is the balance sheet lines. We have 3 different tabs for your asset, liability, and then equity/fund. And this is where you specify the lines that you want to see in the balance sheet page of the financial statements. Each line can have as many accounts or sub-accounts as you want. You can do it third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, don't care. You can have as duplicates. You can have your third level 8 times, and it'll show 8 times with whatever dollar amount is tied to that account. You click the add line to add a new line. The new line will automatically be selected and added to the end of the current lines. We currently don't have a reorder, so if you want your statements in a particular order, they're displayed as they are entered inside the editing here. So if you add a new one, it'll show up at the bottom of the financial statements. You can enter any line name you want. If you used the default option, we grab the account name for that. But you can enter the name. You can find the account you want to add and click Add Account. If you're in the Asset tab, only asset accounts will show up in the account control. If you're in the Liabilities tab, only liability accounts will show up. And if you're in the Equity/Fund Balance tab, obviously only equity and fund accounts will show up. And then when you're done making changes, click the Save button, and this will save all your changes made on each tab. So I'm going to go ahead and show all that now. So if I'm in Financials, I want to create my fund for the fiscal year 2026. And I really want to copy it from 2025 because I have some numbers. So as I showed that before, and then I want to edit. So this is the window that's going to appear. You have your 4 tabs: revenue, expense, adjustments, and balance sheets. You have all your account numbers. I do have a couple of level 7s there. This is my 2026. This was carried over from 2025. If I go open 2025, you can see the numbers are the same. This is my 2026. I can enter in any fringe rate, so I'm going to make this 1.45. I think we go up to 8 decimal places, so I'm going to, before I forget to save it, you cannot edit this part, but you can edit here, and I want to make this, so my 510, I want to make this in the 7th spot, so it'll rearrange them. And now it's the 7th spot, and it bumped all these up by 1. So you can get your accounts in any order, and it works for any range. Like I want to put this number 1. It's hard to see it because it happened so quickly, but it rearranged these, and now that is number 1. So if you want 2 account numbers together, like you want to have this one with that one, you could just make this 38, and now they're together. So that is how you can make them appear in the order you want on the budget details and the monthly side of the financial statements Excel. I want to say that. You can double click, and I think you can just click and start typing. Yeah. Click on any cell and start typing to enter the budget amount, like 100, but it's a revenue, so I make it negative. You could tab or click off of it, and there it saved the budget amount. As you can see when I click, these are your monthly trends. So currently for the default monthly trends, it tries to fill them out evenly, obviously, given that there's 8.33333 is not quite 100. The last 4 months have that extra 0.4 amount. So now this total will equal right on the dot 100%. So if I want to adjust this one, I want to make this 5, and I click apply changes. That one, the 12th one, got the remainder amount. But if I want to make this 20, and I click apply, the 12th one used all his, and then the 11th got reduced. So this is how you can control what percentage of your budgeted amount will show up each month. So in this case, I have 100, it's 20%. So when you look at your financial statements, the budgeted amount for month 2 will be in fact 20 and not as, and then in month 12, it'll show up as a budget of 0. And in month 11, it'll show up as what, $5 and a penny, maybe, depending on rounding. So that is how you can kind of adjust your trends. Because I know obviously all revenue and expenses aren't even across the year. And if you have, so you could just hold the mouse, the left mouse, and drag to highlight all these. And if you notice, there's an asterisk here, and in these, that means there's multiple cells have different trends for these. So if they're all the same trend, it'll show up as a number. If they're the asterisk, that means there's multiple different trends for the in those months. So then if I change this to a 5, it'll adjust all of these and make all of these months 5 be 12 or 5%. And those will be, again, this will be different because some have 5% here and some don't. So all these are 5. Oh, that's 5.0. Interesting. Also, if you want to adjust it by a certain percent, like I want to increase my budget by 10%, this should now say $110. And it will say, obviously, all these also adjusted by 10%, but this is the easiest. So now this says 110. So you can click on Shift. I'm holding down my Shift key. I know you can't see it, but if you hold down your Shift key, that's a select all. Or you can click Control left mouse, and that'll highlight individual cells like this. So those are different ways you can highlight. Or you could just drag your mouse and hover over them, and it'll select all those different cells for editing. So the expense tab is identical to the revenue tab. It operates the same way. You have your trends and your budget amount. You can add adjustment. You can update the budget based on a percent. So like if you expect a 2% increase in all your expenses, you can just highlight Control Shift, and I expect 2. And now my entire budget for the year was increased by 2% just across the board, at least on the expense side. To add an account, I'm going to go ahead and save it before I forget. You click the Add Account button, and here it says expense amount, so we're adding it to the expense side. We do show all revenue and expense accounts in here. And I'm going to go to my setting. I'm in a dialog. So if I'm in a settings, you see my start with search segment is 4, which means then if I go to like bill codes, you pull it up over here, and I type in 040 and I tab, it'll show me all the account numbers that have 040 in the 4th level. That's normally how our account control works. If I go back to financials, I need to pull up that window. If I go, let's pick one, 489, it won't pop up with any because we're always starting with the first. So if I pop in 201 plus 0 plus 488, now I'll see all the 488s. So this is one of the few instances where you do not honor the PFA settings. I just want to point that out. So you don't start typing in 488 and you're not coming up with anything. And it's like, why am I not coming up with any particular account number? So I want to add that, and let's make it. And I click add, and it will add it to the end of the budget. Then you can click escape, and it will remove it. And then so that is 581213. So now I'm in the revenue side, and I want to add an expense account, and I want to make it 12, and then click add. It'll give you an error because it is not a revenue account. However, if I do the same thing, and I check this little box right up here, and I enter in the amount, it will now add it, and you'll see it at the bottom of our list. That's where it is. But if I try to add that same account that we have in 581213, 548549. 213. And I try to add it, it'll say it already exists. As you're not really supposed to have the same account number budgeted twice. For adjustments, you click the add adjustment. These are all your accounts in the budget. Now let's try to pick one that has, so you see the budget there. I want to add one. As you can see, the number's changing right here, and that's going to be your new total for the year. And you can click the dot key to get the decimal places, or you can move your cursor over to get to the decimal places. And this is your adjustment. The last tab is the balance sheet lines tab. And because I copied it over, my original, I use default, so these are all your default balance sheet lines we create. I believe if we don't find a name, we just automatically make it the account number name again on the defaulted lines. So these are all your different account numbers, or all the different balance sheet line items with all level 3 accounts, both liabilities and then your equity and fund. So if you're in here, you can add an account number. You can do it again. Sure, why not? For the fun of it, let's add another one. You can add as many as you want. You can add them on any level. We don't really have a particular preference on how many you can add, how many times they're added. Not sure why you would add it like more than once, but there could be some cases where you report something multiple times on a balance sheet. Then you click add line, automatically highlights it, make it new line, and I'm going to add an asset account. There's no dollar amounts tied to these. These are just for display on your financial statements. So that is how you can set up your balance sheet line items to appear on the balance sheet in the order and style you want them, with whatever line names and order you want. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right there for any questions before I move on to the Excel part of financials, which is financial statements. All right, so I'm going to move on to financial statements, which is the Excel portion of financials. So it allows you to view your budget and compare it to actual data in the Excel spreadsheet. You can select which financials you want to load. Only non-retired financials will appear in that list. So if you're a retired one, it will not appear in that list. There is a calc through date, which is the date the actual data will be through. So if you want it for the whole fiscal year, you can set it to the whole fiscal year. If you just want to show a month, then you set it to the end of a particular month. Currently, we don't allow a start date. The start date will always be the beginning of the fiscal year that you have selected from, whatever fund you selected from, or whatever financial you selected from. That fiscal year will be the start date. Your calc through date must be greater than the start date, but you can do multiple years. We don't limit it to 1 year. If you leave it blank, as in you select your financial and then click the calculate button, it'll automatically fill in with the year. Actually, I think we removed the ability to have multiple years. I'll have to double check that. There's two checkboxes. One is include unassigned accounts in the balance sheet checkbox, meaning that if you happen to have any asset, liability, or equity accounts that you did not assign to balance sheet line items, they'll appear at the bottom of your balance sheet, each section, asset, liability, or equity, as an unassigned item. So you don't have to include that, but if you want to make sure it's kind of like a catch-all in case you missed an assignment, that'll show up there. All the columns are formula based. So changing a number will carry through. So if you through most of the references, depending on what number you're changing, but the variance and percent variance are all based on formulas. So changing a budgeted number will update that. The only thing that is not formula based are the trends. Now in the Excel, if you click on the Excel cell, You will see the trend in there, but it is not like based on a different cell where you can just quickly change that cell to get all the trends to update. So we currently do not have a way you can just update all the trends, except for in the financial editing side of it. We have also a fringe rate box, and it'll include fringe rate calculations based on your fringe rate that you entered in the financial editing side of it as separate columns. The fringe amount will appear in column I of the spreadsheet. It takes the labor amount and multiplies it by your fringe rate. And we use SOEs, PR, and LBR for the calculation. So the dollar amount is we're taking that fringe rate, multiplying it by the PR and LBR transactions for each account number. So if you're not sure where we're getting the numbers from, they are all your PRs and LBRs from that account number. We do have a box at the top of the financial statements that has the fringe rate from your financials. You can always change that and click calculate to see the different fringe rate. We also have put the value in column K where you can just change that, and that'll also change the calculations. Once you have finished going through all the other settings, you can click the calculate and it will load the financials and calculate the data. We also have an export to Excel button to save the financials to an Excel document. We have 15 different spreadsheets, the balance sheet, we have a budget details, we have a profit and loss, and then we have the 12 months. So the first sheet that'll always appear is the balance sheet one. It has all your balance sheet lines. You'll see all your balance sheet lines with a dollar amount at the top, and then all the account numbers tied to it will be underneath it, rolled up by a little plus arrow on the side. So you'll only see the balance sheet line. Only accounts that have transactions in the current year will be included. That total could be zero, so it may show as zero, but that just means that the plus and minus, the sum total was zero. You'll see that unassigned balance sheet line if you check that box. If you did everything right, the assets and liabilities / equity fund balance should be zero at the end of your fiscal year. Note that the totals of each section are divided by 2 as we're just doing a sum on the entire, kind of like Act 51 where we're doing a sum on all of those different rows. We're including the header, the line columns as well, which is a sum of all the account numbers. So we divide by 2 as to not double count. So if you have the multiple account number, it'll show the dollar amounts in 4. If you have the same account number in 4 different places, it'll show it in 4 different places, and it'll also be included in parent accounts. The second tab is your budget details tab. This has all your budget lines with revenues first, followed by expenses in the later rows. The accounts appear in the order they are specified in the financials. So line 1 appears first, line 2, etc. So column F will have the difference between actuals and budget plus adjustments. And it is actuals minus budget plus adjustments. So if it's a negative amount, it doesn't necessarily mean that your budget, you over budgeted or under budgeted, because revenues are typically entered as a negative and expenses are typically entered as a positive amount. Column G has the percent variance, which is how much your budget and adjustments are off from your actuals. And then if you've checked the fringe rate box, the calculated values will be added to the actual total. Unlike the balance sheet spreadsheet, the data for each account will only be displayed once. So if you have an account at the 7th level specified, and then also that 3rd level, so let's say you budgeted at a 7th level for a level 3 488, but you also have level 3 488 in there, the 7th level will have the dollar amount, but not the 3rd level. And the data will always be displayed at the highest account number of the budget. So if you have a level 6 but not 7, it'll be displayed at the 6th level and not the 3rd level. We will not double count actuals, and this is related to actuals. And we will not double count actuals on the budget side. The month spreadsheets also operate the same way. We will not double count an expense. The third tab is your profit and loss, and that is the only tab. It's not based on the selected financials. It just shows both the revenue and expense accounts rolled up at the third level. You just click the plus arrow to see the all third level accounts, and then you can click the plus arrow to see the 7 level accounts. So we kind of broke it up into 3 different levels. You have your line, then you have the third level, and then you have your 7 level underneath that. It should match any profit and loss report that if you run just a regular profit and loss report, that just sums up your revenue expenses over the time period. They should be the same. The last 12 spreadsheets are months 1 through 12. They function the same as the budget details, except their time frame is a month, not the whole year. The actual data is that month's data, and the budget amount is the budget amount from the financial multiplied by the month's trend. And the dollar and percent variance work as the same. So I'm going to go ahead, before we get to questions, show that financial statements. First thing you want to do is choose one. I want to choose 2026. I want to include my fringe, and then I click calculate. So they give you the date range, and then they give you the fringe rate. At the top, this is what used to calculate fringe. And then these are all your spreadsheets. So the first tab is your balance sheet tab, and as you can see, we have each of the balance sheet lines that we created, and then we have the little plus arrow to show all the accounts that are underneath that at the 7th level. So these are all the accounts that have the dollar amount. So we don't show the level 3 accounts, but we'll show the full level 7 account. 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously, it was kind of redundant to show 2010, so we removed that from this as well. And as you can see, I don't have any unassigned accounts. I know we don't have a lot of data for 2026, so showing actuals. You have your liabilities section, and then you also have your equity/fund, which this might actually be 0, but it may actually have transactions. So it's supposed to be a quick look at your balance sheet, and you can see what account numbers make up the transactions. For the budget details, you have your revenue side, all your revenue accounts, and if you remember, I put this one as the first line, so it'll show up first. And we have an actual of 15,000. And because I didn't specify a budget, so I can actually just type this in and make it 15,000. It probably should be negative to match the case. And then you can see we have the dollar variance and the percent variance. So we were off by $456, and our percent, we are off by 3%. There's a 3% difference. These are all our budgeted amounts. You can even see the expense account right here at the bottom. So for the expense, works the same way as the revenues. These are all our budget amounts. This is my adjustment that I put in, and this is the actuals. You can see this is the actual amount plus, which is the fringe amount. So the fringe amount is your fringe rate, which is this number, multiplied by the PR and LBR transactions within this account number, 466, 467. So for the year currently, it looks like we have $1,366 worth of PR transactions and LBR. I don't know if people use LBR that much, so I'm going to just say PR, and we multiply that by the fringe rate to get your actual fringe amount. And if you want to change that, if you just want to make that 1, it will automatically update all the fringe rates to this amount. You can also click one here and click calculate to do that as well. But if you just want a quick change, all these are tied to that. So for profit and loss, we have all your revenues. So you have your total broken out by the third level, and then all the account numbers that have transactions throughout the current year. Again, this part is not editable in financials. This is just a look at your profit and loss for the year. Months are the same as budget details, but instead we take the budget details column. So if you do happen to be changing a amount in budget details, your months are pointing to that column and multiplying it by the trend, and then dividing it by 100 because the trend needs to be converted to a percent. So if you change something in the budget details, each of the 12 months will automatically get that budget updated. Now let's see, what month did we have that 15 grand in? Looks like it was month 7. So because my fiscal year started the 1st, looks like we had a transaction for the month 7, which would be July, for $15,000 in interest and rent. Interesting. So you can get a look at how much each month. And as you can see, that one's 11.67 because we adjusted, I believe it was the 5th month, or the 2nd month rather, to 5. So that is, you can easily look at how changing something here will affect each month. If you want to use Excel to update your budgets. And you can export to Excel and thus get the full range of Excel features as well. So that's kind of all I have as a overview and tutorial on how we're doing financials. Hopefully you guys found some useful information. If there's something you don't like about it or find hard or unnecessary, please let us know, and we can consider making changes and adjusting this to how people are going to be using it. But before I hang up, does anybody have any additional questions on this? All right, I am not seeing any questions. Again, if you have any questions, you can always give me a call. I'll be more than happy to answer if you think of any. If something isn't working right, just let us know and we'll figure out why it's not working right or what we can do to improve it. But I want to thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your week.
You are now working smarter with ProFund Accounting. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.